Most shark attacks do not happen in deep water. They happen close to shore, in waist-deep surf, during the most ordinary moments of a normal day. Most people never see it coming. Over the last 50 years, over 3,500 shark attacks have been reported, most in conditions that felt completely safe, doing things they had done 100 times before. Surviving starts with understanding why these encounters do not begin with obvious danger. Tamara McAllister and Roy Jeffrey Stoddard set out from Paradise Cove in Malibu on January 26, 1989. The morning was calm, the kind of day that draws kayakers to the water. Their tandem kayak drifted just offshore, beyond the last line of breaking waves. To anyone above the water, it looked peaceful, but great white sharks patrol these waters every winter. Large females move close to shore following seals, sea lions, and schools of fish migrating along the California coastline. And something drew one upward that morning. While exact details remain unknown, signs point to a violent and fast breach attack from below, sending both paddlers into the freezing water. No warning, no chance to react. Then came the bite. The shark likely released after the initial bite. Great whites often attack once, then circle back, waiting for weakness. Investigators later documented a massive wound to Tamara's upper thigh, consistent with a great white estimated at over 15 feet in length. No trace of Stoddard was ever found. By the time authorities arrived, there was nothing left to do. On April 27, 2015, Margaret C. Cruz entered the water at Kanahina Cove, Maui, for a morning snorkel, an activity she did every morning. To her, it was routine, peaceful, safe. But tiger sharks are common in Hawaiian waters, especially near reef drop-offs and murky transition zones where deeper water meets the shallows. Unlike great whites, tiger sharks are opportunistic hunters, willing to investigate almost anything. The shark most likely approached cautiously at first, circling just beyond visibility. The attack lasted only seconds. Margaret may never have seen it coming. Nearby beachgoers noticed movement in the water, but by the time rescuers reached her, she was floating near the surface. The rescue timeline shows she was out of the water within minutes, yet it was not enough. In 2010, Stephen Howard Schaefer was kitesurfing off Stewart Beach, Florida. Mid-afternoon, the wind steady. But Florida's east coast is one of the most active bull shark habitats in the world. Unlike many larger shark species, they are aggressive, territorial, and comfortable hunting in tight groups. To a feeding shark, the rapid movement of a board skimming low across the surface can resemble distressed prey. At some point, Schaefer may have crossed directly into the middle of the feeding zone. One shark grabbed at his leg while he was partially submerged, and then, frenzy. Bull sharks are known to become more aggressive when multiple sharks are feeding in close proximity. Witnesses describing him as surrounded suggests several sharks may have converged within seconds. Schaefer tried to climb back onto the board as the sharks circled beneath him, but in shallow, turbulent water, even a single bite to the leg can become catastrophic almost immediately. Lifeguards spotted him struggling and raced out on paddleboards. He was pulled ashore and paramedics began CPR, but the wounds were too severe. There are moments when the outcome is not tragedy, but survival. In July 2015, at J Bay, South Africa, Mick Fanning, a world champion surfer, sat waiting for his wave in the middle of a televised competition. Without warning, a great white shark surged from below, knocking him from his board. For long seconds, the water churned. Fanning kicked, pushed his board, and faced the shark head-on. The safety crew sped in, pulling him from the water. He emerged without a scratch. Later, Fanning said that he was just sitting there, and then all of a sudden, he felt something grab. He punched it in the back. The footage became proof that sometimes a person can come face to face with a shark and walk away unharmed. Tayane Dalazen's story unfolded in clear water off Fernando de Noronha, Brazil. She was snorkeling, filming her swim for friends, when a bull shark appeared. The animal bit her thigh, but the wound was shallow. Her guide and local fishermen reacted instantly, hauling her onto their boat and racing to a nearby clinic. 2 stitches, a tetanus shot, and antibiotics were all she needed. Dalazen later posted that it happened so fast, she saw the shark, felt a sharp pain, and then she was out of the water. She said she was grateful for everyone who helped her. At Gray Whale Cove in California, Nemanja Spasojevic was free diving when a great white struck. The shark's jaws closed around his leg, then released. Spasojevic surfaced, bleeding badly, but remained calm. A fisherman on the rocks called for help. Paramedics arrived within minutes, applying a tourniquet before rushing him to San Francisco General Hospital. Spasojevic spent less than a day in care, then walked out with a row of stitches and a story he later described as the luckiest day of his life. Each of these survivors faced a sudden, violent encounter. Their experiences are not urban legends or distant rumors. They are documented, visible proof that survival is possible. The difference often comes down to seconds, decisive action, and the presence of help nearby. These stories offer not just relief, but a reason to ask how and why some people make it out alive. A surfer paddles out, arms sweeping through the water, unaware of the shadow below. From a shark's perspective, the outline of a surfboard and a pair of kicking feet can blur into the shape of a wounded seal. This is the moment before the breach, a split second where the surface is just a flickering silhouette against the sky. On October 31st, 2003, Bethany Hamilton was lying on her board off Kauai, waiting for a wave. She never saw the shark approach. The animal struck from below and severed her left arm in a single bite. Hamilton's survival was not luck alone. It was the result of quick action by friends and rapid transport to shore. Her story is not an outlier. Off the shores of Catalina Island, Bettina Pereira and her family were enjoying an afternoon kayak when, without warning, a massive 20-foot great white exploded from the water beneath her. In an instant, adrenaline and instinct took over. Thrown into the air, Bettina twisted her body and landed directly onto the shark's back. She immediately drove her legs forward, pushing herself away from the animal as it thrashed beneath her with the kayak in its mouth. The shark circled back, but those few critical seconds gave her enough time to swim toward a nearby boat. That split-second reaction, pure instinct under unimaginable pressure, may have saved her life. But not all are so fortunate. In 1981, surfer Louis Boren was in the water alone, just past the break in Monterey, California, when a massive 25-foot great white attacked from the side and killed him instantly. His board, found several days later, was torn in two, with bite marks and teeth fragments still inside. Experts concluded the shark was approximately 25 feet long, considered the largest white shark ever recorded with verifiable evidence. These cases reveal a pattern. Sharks rely on vision and contrast to hunt in the shallows, often mistaking the shapes above for prey. The risk is invisible from the surface, but the consequences are immediate and physical. Limb loss is common in these breaches, yet survival depends on what happens in the first minutes. The water may look calm, but beneath, The rules are set by what a predator sees, not what a swimmer expects. At New Smyrna Beach, Florida, the sand feels warm, the waves are gentle, and the water rarely rises above a person's waist. Yet Volusia County lifeguard logs tell a different story. Each summer, the incident reports stack up. Bites in knee-deep and waist-deep surf, often just steps from shore. Over the past decade, New Smyrna has recorded more shark bites than any other beach in the world. Most of these incidents happen where people believe they are safest, standing, playing, or paddling in shallow water. The numbers are clear. More than half of all documented bites here occur in water less than 1 meter deep. In 2025, Matthew Bender was wading with friends when a shark bit his calf, leaving deep punctures but sparing major arteries. Bender managed to limp back to the sand, helped by bystanders and lifeguards who applied pressure and called for paramedics. He survived with stitches and a scar. Chief Lifeguard Mike Hernandez has spent years reviewing these cases. He points to the overlap between high human activity and predator foraging. Sharks follow schools of baitfish into the surf, especially near sandbars and troughs where the water suddenly deepens. Most people never see the animal approach. The belief that shallow water offers protection is a myth. New Smyrna's rescue logs challenge that belief, season after season. Spearfishing transforms the ocean's quiet into something charged. When a fish is speared, blood and frantic movement ripple through the water, sending a message that predators understand instantly. Sharks can sense a single drop of blood in millions of liters of water, and the struggle of a wounded fish is a clear invitation. In 2016, Tyler McQuillan's dive off Kona ended abruptly after he speared a snapper. Tyler felt something tug hard at his leg. Then he turned and saw a shark had ripped one of his flippers clean off, but Tyler reacted instantly, jabbing the shark with his spear gun at close range. The sudden resistance appeared to startle the animal just long enough for him to swim back towards safety. Remarkably, he survived with only minor injuries to his foot. Experts often say that in a close encounter, using any tool available can create the critical hesitation needed to survive. But remaining calm, aware, and decisive under pressure can keep you focused in the fight. On June 21st, 25-year-old Alex Dodds was spearfishing with his friend Brody Payno. Without warning, Payno rocketed upward toward him in panic. Right behind him was a great white shark. The shark surged vertically from beneath the divers with explosive speed. The impact launched Dodds out of the water as the shark clamped onto his right leg. But amid the panic, Payno reacted immediately, charging toward the shark and jabbing it repeatedly with his spear gun in an effort to drive it away. Dodds later credited his friend's actions with likely saving his life. Each story follows the same pattern. The instant blood enters the water, the risk escalates. For spearfishers, every wounded fish becomes a signal, and survival depends on swift, cautious action. Large vessels and docks often feel like safe harbors, but the record tells a different story. On March 23, 1994, Heather Boswell was aboard a research vessel in the South Pacific when a routine swim break turned into a nightmare. 9 crew members had entered the open ocean for a swim. Boswell had been in the water for roughly 45 minutes when a large great white shark appeared. The shark first struck crew member Phil Buffington, biting his thigh. He fought back, hitting the shark on the head and forcing it to release him. Moments later, the shark redirected its attention toward Boswell. The animal seized her right leg and pulled her underwater. Boswell resurfaced and desperately reached toward the crew in the skiff. But the shark returned. It clamped onto her left leg and dragged her beneath the surface once again. Only after the shark released her did the reality become clear. Her left leg had been severed below the thigh. The The ship's medical team fought to stabilize her after she lost nearly half her blood volume. Against overwhelming odds, she survived. The incident occurred just after a routine waste discharge, a practice that, according to Coast Guard logs, was common on many cruise lines at the time. Food scraps and gray water create plumes that drift below the surface, attracting scavengers and, inevitably, sharks. Boswell survived, but the event exposed a gap between perceived and actual safety around ships. The illusion of protection extends to docks and anchored vessels. In 2019, Jordan Lindsay was snorkeling within a roped-off section of water near a tour boat off Rose Island in the Bahamas. She was swimming beside her mother, Kami, when 3 tiger sharks suddenly entered the area. Witnesses stated that all 3 converged, striking her in rapid succession as the encounter turned chaotic. Kami immediately swam toward her daughter, desperately trying to pull her away. But the attack unfolded in seconds. Despite efforts to bring her back to shore, Jordan did not survive. These cases show that the presence of a vessel does not guarantee safety. Sometimes it draws danger closer. After a storm, the ocean changes in ways you cannot always see from the shore. In 2022, Tyler Bowling launched his kayak into the Gulf of Mexico near Baytown, Texas. The water, clouded by recent rain, hid everything below the surface. Bowling was paddling in water less than 2 meters deep when a shark bit his leg. The wound was minor, but the timing was no accident. Data from the Florida Museum's Secchi disk readings show that after heavy rain, visibility can drop from several meters to less than half a meter. In these conditions, sharks rely less on sight and more on motion and vibration. Studies link a spike in bites to days when the water turns opaque, just after storms. Reading the water's clarity is a skill that can decide whether a day on the water ends with a story or an emergency call. A shark attack is not a drawn-out struggle. It begins and ends in seconds, often before the mind can make sense of what is happening. For Rodney Fox, the moment came in the surf off South Australia in 1963. He was upright on his board, water barely chest-deep, when a great white hit from below. The force knocked him sideways. In that instant, pain and confusion blurred together. The shark's jaws clamped around his torso, then released. Blood surged from the wound, mixing with salt water, and Fox's body began to shut down. Within minutes, the body diverts blood from the skin and limbs to protect the heart and brain. Limbs go cold, vision narrows, thought fragments into flashes, the taste of salt, the pressure of the bite, the desperate need to breathe. Most shark attacks follow a similar pattern. The initial strike is a bite and release, an exploratory chomp, not a feeding frenzy. But the damage is immediate. Arteries can be severed in a single bite. Blood loss begins within moments. The clock starts ticking from the first second. In Fox's case, fellow surfers pulled him to shore and applied pressure to the wounds. He survived, but only because help arrived before his body crossed the threshold into irreversible shock. Survival in the aftermath of a shark bite comes down to a handful of actions. The first is to keep the animal in sight. Sharks often attack from behind or below, and maintaining eye contact can disrupt their approach. If the animal circles or returns, face it directly. This visual standoff can buy precious seconds. Second, minimize sudden movement. Splashing, thrashing, or frantic kicking can mimic the behavior of wounded prey and trigger a feeding response. Remaining as still as possible, even in panic, reduces the chance of a second strike. Calm, deliberate motion, especially when exiting the water, lowers risk. If a bite occurs, control blood loss. Medical studies show that a tourniquet applied above the wound within 2 minutes can be the difference between survival and fatal blood loss. Use anything available. Tighten until the bleeding slows or stops. Finally, if the shark returns, aim for the eyes or gills. These are the most sensitive targets. A direct strike can interrupt an attack. Each step is grounded in real outcomes, turning panic into purpose when seconds matter. Each year, more people enter coastal waters unaware that mistaken identity and confusion, not malice, drive most attacks. Survival rests not on fear, but on preparation and instinct. The ocean's edge is unpredictable, but knowledge remains our strongest defense. Stay aware. The next decision you make could be the one that saves your life.